Hello, and welcome to Critical Thinking Lecture 9. Today we're going to be talking about modality. That is to say, we're going to be talking about what could be. First, of course, as usual, we're going to meditate. So I'll let you do that, get your head set, and come back. We'll introduce possible worlds talk as a way to talk about what might have been. Now, a possible world is defined as a way this world might have been. Here's an example. Possible world. Person with a mustache. It's a giant one. Could be the case. As you know, it's true that I am bald. And it's false that I have a giant mustache. It's just a regular sized mustache. It puts its pants on one leg at a time like all other mustaches. But what about John could have had a giant mustache? Is that true or false? Look, you can't just look at me and see. Of course, it does seem true. And we can express this, though, with possible worlds talk. Specifically, there's some world where I do have a giant mustache. It's just not this one. See? Here's that world. That's me, giant mustache. All right, let's get a little clearer about this. So, when we talk about this world, we'll call it the actual world. When we talk about possible worlds otherwise, we'll just use possible world to refer to them. Now, while I'm actually bald, it's possible that I have a giant mustache. And it's possible I have green eyes and 12 toes. In the actual world, of course, I have blue eyes and 10 toes. Now, suppose P is true at the actual world, where P is just something like John is bald. Does that mean that it's possible that P? Yeah. If it's actual, it better be possible, because it's happening. Now, suppose it's possible that P is true, which is possible. Does that mean it's actual? Nah, man. Lots of stuff that's possible doesn't happen. The mustache. Check this out. Is there any world in which 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, though? No. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is true in all possible worlds, which is what we mean when we say it's necessarily true. Consequently, it means it's true in the actual world too, right? Because the actual world is one among any other possible worlds, and it's true in all of them. All right, what about this? 2 plus 2 equals 5, right? That's not true in any possible world, because 2 plus 2 equals 4 in every possible world. So, because of that, it's not true in the actual world, obviously. 2 plus 2 equals 5, it's impossible, which is just to say it's not true in any possible world. Now, to get even clearer about this, let's think about some if-then statements and some scope ambiguities that crop up whenever we're talking about possibility necessarily. Now, suppose I say to you, if John is a bachelor, then he must be unmarried. A straightforward reading of this sentence in a possible worlds talk is, if John is a bachelor, then in every possible world, John is unmarried, because there's no world in which he's married. But imagine that John actually is a bachelor. Then it would follow on this reading that John is necessarily unmarried. That means, like, in every possible world, he's unmarried. But surely John could have been married, right? Seems the sentence is better read as something like, if John is an actual world bachelor, then he must be unmarried in the actual world. Here's how we can delineate or distinguish this sort of scope ambiguity. I got the two different readings here, right? And we'll start with the top one. First one says, in every possible world, if John is a bachelor, then John is unmarried. And this is how we're trying to characterize, if John is a bachelor, then he must be unmarried. Now, I'm going to focus on the different placements of every possible world here. There's the scoping. You can use brackets to characterize that. Now, here's some possible worlds. I'll just pop them in here to populate. Now, here are a bunch of worlds with me in them. Only in some of them am I hitched, right? Now, we'll say this one's the actual world. And in these cases over here, I'm a bachelor. And also unmarried. Of course, I'm not a bachelor here, but I'm also not unmarried. Now, if I were a bachelor, I'd be unmarried. I'm just not a bachelor. Either way, this expression, according to this setup of possible worlds, is still true. Now, what about this one? This is a stronger reading. This was the first one we were working with. If John is a bachelor, then in every possible world, John is married. Note where the every possible world is placed. Again, here's going to be the actual world. Now, John is a bachelor here. So for the claim to be true, he has to be a bachelor everywhere. But John isn't a bachelor in every world. So on this reading, or this expression, if we're trying to characterize if John is a bachelor, then he must be unmarried. On this way of understanding the expression, it's not true. Because there are worlds where I'm not. To make it true, on this reading, I'd have to be married in every world. Like this. Since I'd be married in the actual world. Now this should just go to show you that this second reading, the stronger reading, probably not what people mean when they say if John is a bachelor, he must be unmarried. They probably mean something closer to the first in every possible world. Just as a matter of conceptual understanding, if John is a bachelor, then he better be married, right? Because that's what bachelor means. But this is not to say, the second reading here, the stronger one, is how we should interpret what our people when they say that. It doesn't mean that if John is a bachelor, then in every possible world, just necessarily, he'd have to be married or unmarried, because sometimes he might be married. All right, move on to this. Modal square of opposition. We're building on the square, right? The traditional square of opposition is indexed to the actual world. We say all S is P, we meant here. But other worlds have other squares, which is to say from our world other things are possible. Here's just a visual representation. It should be a familiar square. But instead of all A's or B's or whatnot, and no A's or B's, we have necessary, impossible, possible, and non-necessary. Now we're going to work some of this out in class. Just giving you the scaffold here. Let's say this is the actual world. Look, 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 plus 2 equals 5. We know one's necessary, we know one's impossible, and that's going to be true for all the worlds. Let's add some content here. John is short, and John is nice. It's possible, right? Like John is tall. It's also possible that John is mean. It's not necessary, but it's possible. And this is all true of the actual world. Now, here's one way of understanding that at the actual world, it's possible that John is tall. Namely, if there's some other possible world where I am, right? Remember, just like the mustache. Same with John being mean. Same with John being nice. Now, it's not only possible that John is nice because he's nice in the actual world, but according to this diagram, I'm nice in other possible worlds. In fact, just from my own experience, I'm nice in most of them. In any event, talk to you soon.